Hello everyone, my name is Akal and I am a somatic therapist as well as an astrological counselor. If you'd like to find out a little bit more about the work I do, you can check out my website, which I have posted down below the video. So today, what I'm going to cover is Uttara Bhadrapada. This nakshatra is the second to the last. So this is Pisces energy. This is right smack dab in the middle of Pisces. So the rulership of this nakshatra is the overall umbrella as it falls under Pisces, which in Vedic, from the Vedic perspective, is ruled by Jupiter. From Western perspective, it's ruled by Neptune, but we're going to stick with Jupiter in this particular case. So the specific rulership for this nakshatra, though, is Saturn. So what we're seeing is something really interesting that plays out with this nakshatra. What we're actually seeing play out here is one of duality, one of oppositional forces going on here. There's a very dual nature to this nakshatra. And what I mean by dual nature is it has to do with, again, this sort of contrast between Saturn and Jupiter. You have this energy which is religious and expansive in Jupiter, high-minded, philosophical, all this sort of thing. And again, Jupiter is always kind of driving us towards the spiritualization process through religion in a lot of ways, through high-mindedness, through bigger mystical concepts. So it's very broad, very high-minded. Again, I'll use that word. Saturn, on the other hand, is contraction. It's what Saturn to me is like gravity. It's what kind of keeps us mired in the material plane. It's that weight that pulls us down to Earth, that keeps us kind of planted here. Another way to kind of look at Saturn is wherever you see Saturn in your, let's say, your birth chart, you're going to see the energy of delays. So Saturn spiritualizes in a different way than Jupiter. Saturn denies you things. It denies you material possessions, and it denies you, that's really the best way to say it, is it will deny you your sort of material goals in some way. But again, what it's attempting to do by denying you these things, it has to do with, again, it's driving you towards spiritualization. It's trying to get you to not become so identified with those material possessions, those gains that one makes through their physical existence. So now Uttara Bhadrapada it's sort of interesting because in a lot of ways it contrasts with the sign that goes before it. And so the sign before it, which was Puvra Bhadrapada, they're like fire and water. And this is really interesting to me. Puvra Bhadrapada, the sort of deity or the god associated with was Aja Ekapada, I believe was the name. I'm probably mispronouncing that, but oh well. So Aja Ekapada was really interesting because Aja Ekapada it was almost difficult to describe. It was this abstraction almost. So the energy under Puvra Bhadrapada was all about this universalization process. It was about, I guess in a lot of ways, how to universalize one's life, how to sort of remove separations and move towards source. And the best way to describe this in a lot of ways is Aja Ekapada was this energy that was described as a bit of a conduit. It was a conduit, which again, it's really hard. It's like immaterial. It was non-measurable. You can't measure this energy. That's what the descriptions kept saying. This is non-measurable, non-physical. You can't measure it. But it's a conduit of energy that directs fire or Agni. Now, what it's meaning is so if you have source over here, and then you have fire, which is oftentimes fire is described in a lot of ways as being the energy which animates our existence. So for instance, without the sun, which is our big flaming fiery ball in the sky, none of us would exist. In fact, it's questionable whether or not this planet would exist. So Aja Ekapada in that case was this, it was a bit like if you we see this in like cartoons and things. If you pour, like, let's say kerosene or some sort of gasoline, you make a big long line of gasoline and you light it on fire, it's going to essentially be that conduit for the fire to move along the gasoline, giving it fuel. So Ashakapada was that energy that was directing from universal source, bringing that fire so that manifestation can happen. Now Uttara Bhadrapada is, again, it's this polarity. So with Uttara, these names are huge. Uttara Bhadrapada, the energy here is that of Soma. It's about the moon, it's about water, and it's about the watery depths. The deity or the god that's associated with this, I cannot pronounce this. Here, I'm going to guess, I'm going to make a stab at this. And then it's Budhnya. Budhnya, I won't go there. Anyway, you'll get the point. Essentially, this is a watery serpent or a dragon. So a dragon is wisdom. And water is really interesting because water is, well, when you talk about all the sort of creation stories, so you not only have this energy, like, which is coming from the previous nakshatra, which is this fire that animates things, but in this particular case, what you have is you have darkness. You have the depths, the sort of watery depths from which primordial beings, primordial creation crawled up out of. So this energy is so very different than the one before it, even though they're like separated by very little. So why is Uttara Bhadrapada associated with water and depth and about that sort of deep creational cycle? And I'm going to get into this in a little bit as to, in terms of the spiritualization process, why this is all really relevant. But what we need to look at here are the gunas. So the gunas we have on its, I guess, the impersonal mind, on the deep vibe, is we have Suffolk energy, which again, anytime you see Suffolk, you're going to look at a movement towards the spiritualization process. Suffolk energy is simply a flow through as I perceive it. It's not, Rajasic is active and doing, Tamasic is inertia and not doing. So what Suffolk is that balance point. So in a lot of ways, it's a flow through. So when you are balanced, spirit simply flows through. So on a secondary level, once again, we have neutral mind. And then finally, on the tertiary level or the third level or the level at which we most quickly respond to an external stimulus, it is Temasek. So the Temasek energy with this is interesting because Temasek energy is the energy that, again, kind of, it's a bit Saturnian in nature in that it keeps us sort of mired to the material plane. It keeps us fixed on material things. And again, these folks are about transcending those material things. So how does this play out? So how everything really plays out has to do with cultivation. Are you meditating? Are you prayer, yoga, Tai Chi, Qigong, whatever it is that you're into? The spiritualization process, it's a must for these folks. And the reason is the negative aspects of Temasek energy, which is that inertia, is also dullness, lazy, and what are the other horrible terms here? Careless, irresponsible. So nothing particularly positive about these folks if they are not moving along their correct path, or I won't say correct, let's say authentic path. So what ends up happening here, though, is as they decide, and how they decide this is that, remember, Saturn's playing out here. So these folks may be high-minded when they're younger, where they're like, oh, I'm gonna achieve this and achieve that, I'm gonna earn this and earn that, whatever it may be. They're gonna repeatedly sort of get, I guess, rebuffed. They're gonna repeatedly have denials. And so what ends up happening is they can become very jaded. become victims, etc. A lot of these sort of Piscean qualities of martyrdom and victimhood and all this kind of thing. What we're actually end up seeing here is these folks grow continuously, regardless of whether or not the impetus to grow is positive or negative, whether it's Jupiter and expansive, or if it's Saturn and it's denying you. So pain, fear, and suffering, or let's say those aha epiphany moments, both of those things progress these individuals. Again, these individuals, they're all about this movement towards the spiritualization process. So the thing to look out here is that it's an interesting statement when I was doing research on this sign. The interesting thing that it kept saying is that it's passive. So this is deeply, deeply, deeply passive energy. Passivity in this particular case isn't necessarily a bad thing. What we're talking about with passivity here, it has to do with receptivity. It has to do with being kind of open. And they say that this nakshatra, it's completely passive and it doesn't do a damn thing until it gets paired up with planetary energy. So it could be your moon, your sun, your ascendant, some sort of energy that then puts it into action. So the action, though, that these individuals take throughout their course of their life goes back to this idea. Again, it's a more Piscean sort of martyrdom. It goes back to what they're here to do. So they're here to realize that material things aren't the point. But these folks, because their symbol, one of their symbols is quite interesting, which is a cow. So the symbol of a cow is interesting because what is a cow? A cow is totally self-sacrificing. Its existence in a lot of ways, well, I'm not going to say its existence is for humanity, but when we raise cows, essentially they give every part of themselves for us. They give their milk for us, and their flesh, and everything about a cow is self-sacrificing in order to serve the sort of bigger picture in some ways, to sustain and nourish humanity, or wild animals or whatever it is, so that they can then progress along the divine plan. So these individuals will sacrifice their material attainment so that they can serve. So you're going to see a lot of social work types and a lot of folks, like I said, they're service oriented here, educators, etc. They have only, because this is a kama path, meaning desire, their desire, again, authentically speaking, their ultimate desire is that divine passion. They have a passion for the divine, a passion for that movement towards unity, that passion towards the movement towards source. So one of the other symbols that are associated with this nakshatra is a cot. And this also applies to Uttara Bhadrapada, which happened before that, because it's all one cot. It's just on one side, on Uttara Bhadrapada, which again is fire, it's Agni, it's Rajasic energy, so it's very active. You have twin legs on the cot. So you got two legs on the cot. And so you're seeing a lot of twin references with these signs. And with Uttara Bhadrapada, you have the other side of the cot, which is also twin legs. So the symbolism of the cot is interesting because I'm going to go ahead and read what it says, because I think they sum it up better in the description I read, which is it's this stage of stability where the individual is poised for rest. But it's a rest which comes during the final dissolution. When the world of manifestation is reabsorbed into the final cause. Basically what they're saying here is there's kind of a restful phase when you realize that you don't have to strive, when you just surrender. And a big word that happens with these nakshatras, with these two nakshatras, as well as, again, because they're falling under the umbrella of Pisces. Well, Uttara Bhadrapada is, I believe, 3/4 in Aquarius and 1/4 in Pisces, but nonetheless, that influence of Pisces is in Uttara Bhadrapada. What you're seeing, and I like to think of the word faith. So faith is, in a lot of ways, it's sort of that surrender. It's that passivity that you are being directed as spirit flows through you towards that which is correct and authentic for your life path. And in this particular case, and remember, this is about service. This is about service to not humanity, to the divine plan, which humanity then relates to. So when you see service to humanity, you see that, to me, that's more of a Virgo archetype. This is about service to God. Again, infinity, God, source, whatever you want to call it. So the last thing I'll talk about with this nakshatra is Yogi Bhajan's association with it. So projection 25 is the correspondence. Again, what I did was I connected through the Gunas. So projection 25 is Uttara Bhadrapada according to the alignment of the Gunas. Now, projection 25 is, he calls the educator. And the educator is not only this idea of educating, others, it's about the detachment, the objectivity that one can cultivate. And again, when you see a lot of Suffolk energy, you have this opportunity of having objectivity. It's this opportunity of having that neutral mind. And again, Suffolk and neutral mind are very similar. That neutral mind, which allows one to simply perceive things as they pass through one's awareness. So the educator in this particular sense is, I guess the subject of the education is the self. So what Yogi Bhajan describes is the self is learning to objectively perceive, how do I say this? Perceive, I guess, the patterns and the habits of the ego. And it's those patterns and habits that one is becoming, that one is transcending, Neptune, again, Neptune with Pisces, that one is transcending in order to, I guess, sort of move towards unity with the divine. So that's essentially what this nakshatra, or which Yogi Bhajan was talking about. It's this idea, once again, that one needs to cultivate meditation, prayer, etc., and to, again, allow one's higher self to educate the ego and where it's attached, where it's caught up in its patterns. And so I'm going to go ahead and show you in the next segment how I made the connection between projection 25, educator, and Uttara Bhadrapada. All right, here's Yogi Bhajan's book, The Mind. Fantastic book. Mind's in terrible shape. And in the back of this book is my favorite part, which is the flowchart of the universal mind, or Chitta. So here we have Temasek energy, Rajasic energy, Sattvic energy, being the three fundamental energies that basically underlie all existence. So what we're doing here is, first off, we have Sattvic energy as its base. So here we are, Sattva. And we're going to follow that line down towards the neutral mind. So Sattvic, then Sattvic once again. And then it's Temasek on its tertiary level. So here we go. It says the intuitive assessment of personality defects to be covered, the educator. So what we do then is we flip through the book. We find projection 25, the educator. Here's a little blah, blah, blah. And the Tantric Kriya, with a whole lot of Wahegurus. So this mantra is, or this exercise rather, is done for 11 to 31 minutes. And Waheguru basically means hooray God. That's always how I interpret it anyway. So in the next segment, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do this exercise. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and let you know how to do the Tantric Kriya, which is the exercise for Uttara Bhadrapada or projection 25 educator. So this meditation, to me, it's fairly simple. And so because it is so relatively simple, I do suggest doing the longer time frame. So the suggestion in the book is for 11 to 31 minutes. Again, if it's very difficult for you for whatever reason, 3 minutes is kind of the minimum. You want to do it for at least 3 minutes and then build to 11 and then build to 31. So the exercise itself, I found, well, basically what it's doing is it's emphasizing the exhale. Now, how that's interesting is, to me, this is very interesting because what I see when you emphasize the exhale is that it emphasizes the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system. And if anything emphasizes the parasympathetic branch of the nervous system, what it's doing is that it is de-stressing you. It is, essentially it's moving you towards a more relaxed state. So basically the exhale on this is 12 seconds long. And it's done in the form of the mantra, which is Waheguru. We do this mantra as many times as possible on one breath. So it's inhaling for 4 seconds through the nose. And then what you do is you'll exhale the mantra, which is Waheguru, 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 Waheguru. And again, as many Wahegurus as you can get in until you are completely empty with air. And Yogi Bhajan says this is approximately 12 seconds. And the other thing about this exercise is moving you towards a de-stressed state is the overall reduction in the number of breaths per minute. So as you decrease the number of breaths per minute, you're decreasing the motion of the diaphragm, which then decreases the motion of the mind. And again, what you got going on here is you have this Temasek energy that's playing out. So these folks, in a Temasek energy means you are stuck in mind. You're stuck there. So needing to gain that objectivity, how we do that is we slow the motion of the diaphragm, which slows the motion of the mind. One detail that Yogi Bhajan did not put in the description is the use of the navel point, which I'll get into in a moment. But let me go ahead and show you the mudra first. So the mudra, palms are up, and you're going to interlace your fingers, and the thumbs are going to be extended straight forward. Not super, super rigid, but straightforward. And your fingers, you don't want to do this. You want to allow them to go out at quote unquote 45 degrees. And you're going to hold them at the level of the heart. Now, something interesting is happening here. So what does this force my shoulders to do? It forces them to slightly round forward. And it also forces my shoulder blades to lift up. So what we're doing is we're moving compression on the area that basically is around the kidneys. There's a knot that goes right through here. And what this exercise will help do is it helps unify the sort of energy of the solar plexus, one's will, with one's navigation, one's heart center. So when we align those two things, and what we're doing here again is we're slowing the motion of the diaphragm. The diaphragm is the sort of conduit between those two spaces in a lot of ways. So once again, the mudra, palms up, interlace the fingers, fingertips angled out at 45 degrees, thumbs straight. You want to plant your sit bones down, and you want to allow the spine to adjust and stack. So how I typically do this is first I plant the sit bones, inhale a deep breath, and allow the body to shift as it needs to shift. And then you exhale, retain out, and tuck the chin. So the reason why you want to inhale, retain the breath, exhale and retain out while you're getting into your seating position, is that all the muscles, essentially from area right below around your belt line all the way up to your third eye point, essentially is like a big tube. And actually this tube goes all the way down to your pelvic floor. But this tube, it's essentially postural in nature. So if you inhale, retain the breath, it's going to shift, allow you to shift in order to accommodate more air, because that's its function. Its function is to accommodate air. If we're not accommodating enough air, we die eventually. We'll all die eventually, what am I saying? But if you're not breathing, you're going to die. And so these muscles are, like I said, they're very much about sustaining our life and our existence. If they're too constricted, we start to feel anxious and tight. And if they're open and we're breathing completely and fully, then we're in a very, very de-stressed, relaxed state, which is where these folks need to be. Uttara Bhadrapada, they need to have that sort of Piscean anxious nervousness, basically simmer down so they can go deep. And again, remember, one of the symbols here is the deep waters. So they go deep, 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 deep. And again, it's all about the movement towards liberation, towards enlightenment. So let me go ahead and show you how this looks. So the eyes you're going to bring to the tip of the nose. So you set your mudra first, bring it up to the level of the heart, plant, get your alignment. Now the eyes, this is how I bring them to the tip of my nose. I usually start by looking up into the left, inhale, deep breath. Then you want to roll your eyes slowly up and to the right, retain the breath. And then you want to roll your eyes directly up, retain the breath. Exhale all the air out. And bring the eyes down to the tip of the nose, retaining out briefly. And that's how you bring your eyes to the tip of the nose. And you can do this lap a few times. I do it until it feels right. So usually I'll go through that process about 3 times before I bring my eyes to the tip of the nose. So again, the breath pattern here is inhaling 4 seconds. And then Waheguru, 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 Waheguru. I'm completely out of air. Inhale and repeat. So again, you want to do this for 11 to 31 minutes. Ideally, to finish this exercise, you'll just inhale, retain the breath, think about 10 to 20 seconds, exhale, relax your hands. And as always, at the end of every one of these concentration exercises, you want to release into a deep surrender, into meditation, an open awareness, simply allowing everything to rise, thoughts, emotions, feelings, sensations, and just be. So with all that said, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I thank you for watching.